Imagine this. The currency you use to buy groceries, pay your bills, and save for the future isn't controlled by your own country, but by a foreign power. A power that uses its currency dominance to influence nearly every major transaction worldwide. This has essentially been the global reality for the past century, with the US dollar holding the role of the world's reserve currency. After World War II, the dollar took on this starring role, becoming the backbone for global trade and the primary currency held by central banks. But over the years, this setup has sparked controversy, particularly among countries aiming to grow their economies independently of Western influence. Recently, the reliance on the US dollar has come under increased scrutiny, seen by some as an obstacle to true economic progress. Enter BRICS, a coalition of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa looking to rewrite the rules. They're crafting an alternative financial system, one that doesn't lean on the dollar, giving themselves and other nations a new way to trade and thrive. This multi-currency system is a bold concept, exploring digital currencies and even a decentralized payment network designed to bypass the dollar completely. So why does this matter? If BRICS succeeds, it could signal a shift in the global financial landscape, one where the dollar isn't the default choice and countries have new independent options for trade and savings. Stay with us as we dive into this potential financial shakeup and unpack how this new system could impact not only global economies, but also people like you. But before we dive in, do yourself a favor, go ahead and like this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on the latest updates. We're here to keep you in the loop on global events, major financial moves, and everything impacting the world economy, so stay connected. To understand why this is an issue, we have to go back to 1944, when the world's leading Western powers gathered at the Bretton Woods Conference. Many nations at that time were still colonies under Western rule, and the financial system they created reflected that power structure. At Bretton Woods, the US dollar was designated as the primary currency of international trade. The United States was given veto power in key global financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank, which were created to oversee this new economic order. This system made the US dollar king, giving the United States enormous control over global finance. Since then, the US has used this control to its advantage in various ways. The dollar's dominance allows the United States to print more currency without facing the same consequences that other nations might. It can impose sanctions on countries that refuse to align with its policies, effectively freezing them out of the global financial system. In fact, over a third of all countries, many of which are developing nations, are currently under US sanctions. These sanctions make it difficult for these countries to trade internationally, restrict their economic growth, and ultimately keep them in a cycle of poverty and dependence. For countries on the receiving end, these sanctions are a form of economic warfare. Washington has used the dollar to isolate and punish nations like Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and many others. Beyond sanctions, the US and its allies have also seized hundreds of billions of dollars in assets from these countries. This includes the reserves of central banks, which are the savings of these countries held in case of an emergency. For example, when Russia faced sanctions, the US and Europe froze billions of dollars in Russian reserves. These actions have left a sour taste for countries worldwide, especially in the global south, a term referring to developing nations primarily in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. One of the most damaging aspects of this system is the US ability to run enormous trade deficits without suffering the usual consequences. In essence, this means the US imports more than it exports and finances this gap by issuing debt, mainly in the form of US Treasury securities. Because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, there is a guaranteed demand for US debt, which funds these deficits. What does this look like on the ground? It means workers in poorer countries around the world are engaged in hard labor, mining resources, or producing goods that are exported for dollars, which their countries need to pay for imports and balance their budgets. Meanwhile, the US can simply print more dollars to meet its needs. In developing nations, this dependence on the dollar creates a continual struggle. To buy essential goods and pay for imports, these countries need dollars. But because they don't control the dollar, they're at the mercy of US financial policy. The US Federal Reserve, which is America's central bank, can decide to print more dollars or raise interest rates. When the Fed raises rates, it strengthens the dollar, which can drive down the value of other countries' currencies. This puts enormous pressure on poorer nations, making it more expensive for them to import goods and pay off debts that are often denominated in dollars. With this history and current situation in mind, it's easy to see why a growing number of countries are looking for alternatives. And one of the most prominent groups pushing back against this dollar-dominated system is BRICS, an alliance of 5 major emerging economies: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Together, these countries represent around 40% of the world's population and a significant portion of global economic output. BRICS was originally formed as a loose alliance to discuss economic issues, but in recent years, it has grown more ambitious. These countries are actively working to create a financial system that doesn't rely on the US dollar. They're striving to create an environment where all member nations have equal power and no single currency or country has a monopoly on influence. In 2024, BRICS took a major step toward achieving this vision. Russia, as the rotating chair of BRICS for the year, hosted the annual BRICS Summit in Kazan, where they presented a bold plan to transform the global financial system. Russia's finance ministry and central bank put forward a comprehensive proposal for a new cross-border payment system called the BRICS Cross-Border Payment Initiative, BCBP. The primary goal of this initiative is to enable BRICS countries to conduct international trade without using the US dollar, instead using their own national currencies. If successful, this system would reduce the influence of the dollar and empower countries to pursue their own economic goals, free from US sanctions and financial restrictions. What's particularly interesting about the BCBP is that it also considers using new digital technologies. The report mentions distributed ledger technology, DLT, the foundation of blockchain, as a potential basis for this new financial network. Using DLT would allow BRICS countries to create a decentralized payment system that no single country or institution controls. This decentralization would make it difficult for any one nation, including the United States, to interfere or impose sanctions on transactions within the BRICS network. In addition to DLT, the BRICS countries are exploring the use of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. A CBDC is a digital version of a country's currency that's issued directly by its central bank. By using CBDCs, BRICS nations could settle trade imbalances directly between their central banks, eliminating the need for intermediaries such as Western financial institutions. This direct settlement would not only save money on transaction fees, but also speed up payments and make the system more secure. To create a fairer, more balanced financial system, BRICS is also focusing on reforming multilateral financial institutions. The New Development Bank, NDB, also known as the BRICS Bank, was established as an alternative to Western-dominated institutions like the IMF and World Bank. Unlike these Western institutions, which often impose strict conditions on their loans, the NDB offers financial support without requiring countries to adopt specific policies. This flexibility allows countries to prioritize their own development goals without compromising their sovereignty. Currently, the NDB aims to issue 30% of its loans in local currencies, with plans to increase this percentage in the future. By doing so, the NDB hopes to reduce dependence on the dollar and allow countries to borrow in their own currencies. The NDB isn't the only solution BRICS is exploring. In 2014, the alliance established the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, CRA, as a potential alternative to the IMF. The CRA is designed to help BRICS countries manage short-term balance of payments issues and financial crises without turning to Western financial institutions. However, the CRA has its limitations. It still relies on the dollar, and it's partially tied to the IMF, which means it doesn't fully break away from the existing system. Russia's proposal for 2024 includes recommendations for reforming the CRA to make it more independent and less reliant on the dollar. The BRICS nations aren't the only ones seeking alternatives to the dollar. Across Africa, countries are working on the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, PAPSIS, which would allow cross-border transactions in African currencies. Similarly, Southeast Asian countries in ASEAN have begun establishing systems to support local currency transactions. These initiatives reflect a global trend, as more and more countries look to create regional systems that can reduce their dependence on the dollar and offer a degree of economic sovereignty. On a larger scale, BRICS is considering additional measures to support this shift. One approach is to encourage the use of national currencies in cross-border investments. Currently, if a Brazilian company wants to invest in a Russian project, it often has to go through financial institutions in places like New York or London. BRICS aims to change that by creating direct investment channels that allow members to invest in each other's economies without involving Western institutions. This vision includes a proposed BRICS Clear platform, a secure network that would enable investments in local currencies and reduce the influence of external financial powers. The dependence on the dollar also extends to how countries store their reserves. Today, most nations hold their reserves in U.S. Treasury securities, essentially lending money to the U.S. government. This reliance on U.S. debt not only strengthens the dollar, but also makes other countries vulnerable to U.S. financial policy. When the U.S. Federal Reserve raises interest rates, for example, it strengthens the dollar and puts pressure on other currencies, making it harder for nations to import goods and pay off their debts. In response, the BRICS proposal suggests diversifying reserves by creating a basket of currencies or other assets that countries can hold instead of the dollar. For instance, BRICS could issue bonds in local currencies backed by the resources of BRICS nations and offer them as an alternative to U.S. Treasury securities. This diversification would give countries more flexibility, allowing them to reduce their exposure to the dollar and the risks associated with U.S. policy decisions. One long-term idea on the table is the potential creation of a new international currency specifically for BRICS nations. This currency would act as a neutral unit of account for international trade, making it easier for countries to settle transactions without using the dollar. The idea draws inspiration from the IMF's Special Drawing Rights, SDRs, which were originally designed as a global currency. SDRs are backed by a basket of major currencies, but they're not widely used in daily trade, and their value is still heavily influenced by Western currencies. BRICS envisions a similar currency, but with more equitable participation from emerging economies. The creation of a BRICS currency would be a complex task and is not something that could happen overnight. However, by exploring this possibility, BRICS is signaling its commitment to reshaping the global financial system in a way that provides alternatives to the US dollar. In the meantime, BRICS plans to promote the use of SDRs as a stopgap solution. If SDRs were more widely used and reformed to include currencies from emerging economies, they could serve as a stepping stone toward a more balanced international monetary system. To truly make this transition work, BRICS is also focusing on investments in commodities and natural resources. By trading commodities like gold, grain, and oil within the BRICS network, countries can settle trade imbalances using tangible assets rather than relying solely on currency. This commodity-based trading system could offer an alternative way to conduct international transactions, one that isn't subject to the whims of currency exchange rates or interest rate fluctuations. The BRICS plan doesn't stop there. It also includes proposals for new financial instruments that would be backed by the resources and assets of BRICS nations. For example, the new development bank could issue a BRICS Digital Investment Asset, a digital bond backed by a basket of resources from BRICS countries. This digital asset would provide an alternative investment vehicle for countries looking to diversify away from U.S. Treasury securities, giving them a secure, dollar-free option for international trade and investment. Ultimately, the BRICS initiative is about creating choices for countries that have long been restricted by the dollar-dominated system. While these proposals are ambitious, they are also necessary, reflecting the economic shifts happening worldwide. The economic power of the US and its Western allies is declining relative to the growth of emerging markets, and the global financial system hasn't kept up with these changes. By pushing for alternatives, BRICS is leading the way toward a more multipolar financial world, one where no single currency or country has disproportionate power. This new system envisions a fairer balance where developing nations can pursue their own paths to growth without being held back by a system that was never designed to benefit them. The BRICS initiative may still be in its early stages, but it has already set the groundwork for a future in which global finance is more inclusive, resilient, and equitable. So what does this all mean for the future? We could see a world where countries can trade and invest freely without worrying about sanctions or currency fluctuations dictated by foreign powers. It's a world where the US dollar isn't the only option and where countries have a real say in how the global financial system is run. While there are still many challenges to overcome, the path that BRICS is paving could very well be the beginning of a financial revolution that makes the global economy work for everyone, not just a privileged few. In a world increasingly dominated by powerful financial entities, the BRICS initiative is not just a shift, but a bold reimagining of global finance. This push toward a multi-currency, decentralized system signals a future where economic sovereignty and balance are no longer wishful thinking, but attainable goals for many countries. BRICS aims to break free from the grip of dollar dependency, giving nations the freedom to forge independent economic pathways without the constraints of foreign policies or sanctions. Imagine a world where no single currency wields unchecked power, where trade, growth, and investment are accessible to all. It's a revolutionary vision, and while BRICS faces challenges in bringing it to life, the momentum is undeniable. As the world watches, BRICS is planting the seeds for a financial system that's fairer, more resilient, and truly global. This could be the dawn of a new financial era where economic opportunities are as diverse and dynamic as the world itself. So what do you think? Could this really be the beginning of a financial revolution? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay in the loop on all things global finance and major economic shifts. Now, if you made it to the end and want more content like this, consider subscribing. Dropping a like would also be much appreciated. Either way, have a great day and thanks for watching. Bye.